Well, today we're going to talk about gray divorces, which happen when Americans over 50 split up. She now says that her group is like an AA meeting. It's an online group where everyone feels safe and free to talk. Dr. Phil, a well-known doctor and TV host, has finally said something that no one saw coming. This event was like a time bomb going off, sending shock waves and a lot of confusion through the people. People asked questions, made guesses, and gave their opinions about this topic. When did Dr. Phil say something like that? Who is this woman in the dark? What kind of time did he spend with the woman? Did this confession change anything in his personal life or in show business? If it did, you need to stop thinking about these kinds of questions. Take a seat and don't worry while we help you find the information you need. If you want to use it, you should stay tuned. A checkup on Dr. Phil. The news that his wife Anne had given birth to their first son, a bouncy baby boy, made Joseph McGraw Jr. very happy on a rainy day in September. Given the conditions of the birth, this was reason to celebrate. A lot of family and friends came together to see and touch the baby. Who was this child and what day did he come into the world? Phil McGraw was born in Vineta, Oklahoma on September 1st, 1950. Because he was the first and only boy in the McGraw family, his father loved him the most. She was his bigger sister and her names were Deanna and Donna. Then, a few years after he was born, a sister named Brenda was born. Their father worked for a company that sold tools to oil fields in North Texas, so that's where they grew up. Phil worked at a W Root Beer and a nearby chain called Pizza Planet when he was 13. His mother, Anne, was a stay-at-home mom who didn't make any money, so as the family grew, his dad had to get a new job that paid more. This made him a lot of money, so the family moved to Kansas, and Joseph chose to become a psychologist, which had been his dream for a long time, from which he did things outside of school, like sports, and competed in sports events. Phil quickly became one of the most sought-after and liked guys at school, which made his parents happy to be his parents. He was on the high school football team and played linebacker. In 1998, he got a football scholarship to the University of Tulsa and played linebacker there for Coach Glenn Dobbs. It was sad that on November 23rd, that year, his team lost to the University of Houston by a score of 100-6. It was one of the biggest losses in college basketball history. After that, he changed schools and got his Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas in 1975. But Phil wasn't happy with how well he was doing in school, so he chose to keep going until he reached a high level of competence. Phil went to North Texas University, which is now known as the University of North Texas. In 1975, he got his master's degree in experimental psychology. After 3 years, he got his Ph.D. in clinical psychology. The subject of his dissertation was rheumatoid arthritis, a psychological intervention. After he graduated from Texas University, he stopped being known as Phil and started being called Dr. Phil because of his school background. We should call him a doctor from now on, okay? After earning his Ph.D., Dr. Phil went to the Wilmington Institute for a year to learn more about investigative psychology. Frank Lawless, who later became the main psychologist for the Dr. Phil TV show, was his doctorate advisor, which is interesting. Watch the video to learn everything you need to know about his work. A job. After getting his Ph.D., Dr. Phil moved to Wichita Falls, Texas to be with his father again. His father had become a psychologist, which was his dream, and even opened his own private psychology lab. You know, doctor? Phil has one very interesting trait that he got from his dad. It was the trait of working hard and not giving up. Even though he was old, Joseph McGraw was set on becoming a psychologist and didn't let his age or background stop him from achieving his goals and dreams. In 1985, Dr. Phil, his father, and a businesswoman from Texas named Thelma Box worked together to put on Pathways self-help workshops. For 5 years, Dr. Phil was in charge of this show. In 1991, he sold his share of the company for $325,000. Life Strategies was Dr. Phil's first book, which came out in 1999. In the next 6 years, Dr. Phil wrote 3 more books about relationships, relationship rescue, self-matters, and family first. He wrote a bunch of articles with other people for WebMD and USA Today as well. 2 years before he quit Thelma Box for good, Dr. Phil and lawyer Gary Dobbs started Courtroom Sciences, Inc., a company that helps lawyers with trials. In fake courtrooms, the courtroom would do dry runs of court cases. They would talk about what parts of the lawyer's case he worked on and what parts he didn't. Dr. Phil is no longer a company leader or director. His work as a trial consultant is used as inspiration for the TV show Bull, and he is also known as one of the show's authors. After that, he worked with Oprah Winfrey and started working for CSI, which changed the course of his career. As a hobby, Oprah Winfrey chose legal advice and asked them to help her get ready for the beef trial in Amarillo, Texas. Later, Winfrey told Dr. Phil how grateful she was for his important part in her victory in that case, which ended in 1998. It was then that she asked him to be on her TV show. His first show got a lot of good reviews, so in April 1998, he started appearing every week as a relationship and life strategy expert. For a few years, Dr. Phil kept appearing on Oprah Winfrey's show. He wanted to be in charge of his own show and make his own money. So in September 2002, Dr. Phil started Pitesky Productions and started his daily TV show, The Dr. Phil TV Show. Winfrey Harpo Studio helped make the show. The only point of the show was to give advice, and each episode featured Dr. Phil talking about a different topic while giving his guests help. After that, he extended his syndication deal with the well-known King World Productions for another 5 years, incorporated the company that distributed his show, which promised him an annual payment of $15 million, and made sure that the show would continue from 2013 to 2014. It was sad that this was the last time he saw his dad. Dr. Phil told shocking facts about his bond with his dad. He said that Joseph McGraw had never told him that he was proud of him or praised him for something he had done, but that something had happened the last time he talked to Joseph. His father told him he would be successful 24 hours before he died. During his stints on Oprah's Soul Conversation, Dr. Phil talked about what his father told him about his future success before he started working in TV. Joseph McGraw told him, "There will come a time when you will be able to talk to a lot of people." These words stuck with Dr. Phil and didn't leave him for a long time. He even said that his father's last words didn't just tell him he would be successful in the future, even though his father never praised his efforts to do well while he was still alive, but also filled in for his father when he needed a message of congratulations, or at least a pat on the back. Forbes put Dr. Phil at number 13 on their list of the 100 coolest celebrities in 2007. Nielsen Media Research said that same year that 6.69 million people watched Dr. Phil, putting it in 4th place in the polls. It's interesting that after a year, the program fell to 6th place. Who watched it? 5.69 million people. It was during this time that only the Oprah Winfrey Show was more famous than Dr. Phil. In the 117th week in a row, starting on December 11th, 2018, the show maintained its top spot among other shows, earning a national Nielsen rating of 2.9 live plus same, and becoming the most popular broadcast show. His standing kept getting better, and by 2020 he was ranked 22nd on the Forbes list, having made $65.1 million. On November 23rd, Dr. Phil announced that he was going to start a new TV network in Fort Worth called Merritt Street Media in 24. The network would mostly show news and true crime shows, and Dr. Phil Primetime, the show that will take over after Dr. Phil, would be the main show. It's interesting that the Merritt series began on April 2nd, 24. Taking part in charity. In addition to being a psychologist and a TV show, Dr. Phil felt compelled to help people because he cared about their health. He was able to think outside the box and gave money to a charity that made healthcare much better. There was a world pandemic that made it impossible for people to go outside to find hospitals or pharmacies. When did this foundation start? What made you write this? How did he deal with the never-ending care needs of people all over the world? In 2012, Dr. Phil came up with the idea of starting the healthcare company Doctor On Demand Foundation. People can make virtual appointments with a network of doctors and therapists through this online tool. He thought about how this foundation might be able to keep going even during a global crisis, and in 2014 he chose to start a web and mobile service. American Broadcasting Corporation News said that the company's main goal was to offer services related to managing medications, preventive care, physical and mental health. Around 11,000 board-certified doctors worked for the company as of 2015. During the global coronavirus pandemic, the company increased the number of therapists it had on hand and increased the rate at which it transmitted information in March 2020 to handle the growing number of people who needed medical help. Dr. Phil needed help with this, though. Jay McGraw and Adam Jackson worked hard to make the company successful and reach its goals. He ran the business with his son Jay McGraw as CEO. The business provided virtual medical visits, mental health treatments, and other services. Managing chronic conditions and health programs are two examples. But some psychotherapists and people who aren't pros have said bad things about Dr. Phil's advice and methods. Some critics say that his advice is at best too simple and at worst useless or damaging. In one episode of Dr. Phil's TV shows, the National Alliance on Mental Illness said that his behavior was immoral and very careless. Interestingly, it was said that the only reason this business was created was not to help people with their medical needs, but to take their hard-earned money. How true was this claim? It was in 2001 that Dr. Phil told the Sun Sentinel that he had never liked the old-fashioned way of therapy. He liked a more modern method better, one that wouldn't just talk to one person at a time in an office and say, "I'm not the hush puppies, pipe and let's talk about your mother" kind of psychologist in addition, doctor. Phil often tells people to get professional help, especially psychotherapy, because many people who have mental health issues would rather not talk about them than get help. A surprising study from 2006 at Ohio State University found that people were more likely to seek help after seeing how professionals dealt with similar problems on the Dr. Phil show. The study said that this happened because people tend to make up a relationship with Dr. Phil while watching the show, which makes them more likely to believe that medical advice can help them. It's important to remember that after this company opened, more young and old people who were quietly depressed and lonely finally came to get help without worrying about being judged. But the Dr. Phil show is over even though it was a hit for more than 20 years. This has made the media and the public curious about the main reason for the show's closure. What could have caused such an interesting, educational, and fun show to end in such a strange way? Check back to find out. The Dr. Phil show was canceled at a time when the show seemed to be doing very well in terms of money, medicine, and popularity around the world. It was announced that it would not be returning. A lot of people were sad about this news, especially fans who always planned their days around the show and never missed a conversation that was going on during or after the show. Now we have to ask, why? Columbia Broadcasting System says that Dr. Phil announced the cancellation of the show in 2023, saying that he wanted to try new things as the main reason for his choice to end the show. When he made his announcement, it put an end to reports that he had to end the show because of money problems. Everyone knew that Dr. Phil had chosen to end the show for personal reasons. Based on the information gained, Dr. Phil took time away from his long-running daytime network talk show to work on other projects that were more in line with his interests and passions. It was also found out that Dr. Phil had talked about ending the talk show in secret a few years before he told everyone, and take a different job path with a close business partner. There were also rumors that his wife was to blame for the end of the show. But Dr. Phil put this rumor to rest by saying that his wife has been there for him and soothed him throughout his talk show career. As she saw it, the show was his small way of helping people without expecting anything in return. She wished he would never end it for any reason. But, the media go the extra mile to show that their points of view are real. This story stuck around even after Dr. Phil tried to clear his wife's name. However, at the end of the show, Dr. Phil said that he felt forced to talk to a wider audience because he cared deeply about the American family and was determined to help bring back the meaning in our core values. Dr. Phil's comment that he was very worried about the American family made it sound like he wanted to focus on bigger social problems and family relationships. Since network TV shows are giving streaming services a boost in fame, Dr. Phil may have thought he could reach more people. What part of his daily life did it play in his show? As the Dr. Phil show got more popular, his personal life became a big deal for both fans and foes. A well-known person herself often crossed paths with his work life. People watched the show because they were interested in how their interaction worked, which led to a unique mix of personal and professional stories. There have been rumors that personal family problems may have had something to do with the cancellation of the Dr. Phil show. Personal relationships are hampered by the stress of keeping up a great job, causing possible problems that may have led to the end of the show. The public is curious about how much of this cancellation was due to Dr. Phil's duties as a husband and father. Robin McGraw has been an important part of Dr. Phil's personal and professional growth. As one of the founders of the Dr. Phil Foundation, she has impact in public life as well as the home. Some people think that her thoughts and feelings about the show's direction and how it affected their family life may have played a part in the decision to stop. How did the fans feel when the show was canceled? When it was announced that the Dr. Phil show would be ending, fans had a lot to say. A lot of people were shocked and upset, and some wrote about it on social media. Fans of the show had a hard time accepting the end of a long-running mainstay of daytime TV, and some people wondered why such a big decision was made. Because of his wife and other issues, Dr. Phil's show was canceled, which makes people wonder about his job prospects. Will he switch to a different style or take a break to deal with personal issues? Getting rid of such a big show will definitely leave a mark. A lot of people are excited to see how Dr. Phil handles this change. As Dr. Phil fans think about the show's end, one question keeps coming up. What will Dr. Phil and Robin McGraw do next? With their well-known brand, many projects, and charitable work, the couple's future is still unknown. The people will probably still be very interested in what they do next, whether they try new types of TV shows or work on personal projects. Will there be any more working together? Dr. Phil and Robin have always worked together and helped each other. Fans are curious about whether they will work together again in the future, whether it's on TV or in some other way. Their shared experiences and hobbies could lead to fun things outside of daytime TV. In the next part of the movie, though, Dr. Phil will talk about one of his biggest problems, a personal battle with illness. Dr. Phil McGraw, a talk show host and former psychologist, has helped hundreds of people get through tough times. He has helped them deal with everything from bullying and drug abuse to sadness and domestic violence, but he has had trouble with his health problem, type 2 diabetes, for years. As of late, Dr. Manny Alvarez, senior managing health editor of FoxNews.com, met with McGraw to talk about his fight with the illness and how he was able to get past the mental obstacles that come with dealing with it. Dr. Phil answered, "There's a mental attitude about this disease that makes people think you get it from being lazy, sloppy, eating badly, or not being real. I was very busy, played sports, and worked out a lot. Notably, this has a lot to do with genes, and I think people need to get over the shame that comes with that. The American Diabetes Association says that African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and older people are more likely to have type 2 diabetes. Dr. Phil chose to help get adults to fight this disease by joining forces with AstraZeneca and their national campaign, the On It movement. This is interesting because Dr. Phil himself had this disease. 3 out of every 5 Americans have this diagnosis or are at risk for getting IT. So this is what we want to do, make people more aware of it," he said. McGraw met with his doctor to make a treatment plan that would work for him and his way of life when he was first identified 25 years ago. Some guys would work out and then not eat anything. Then, at the end of the day, they'd eat everything. His doctor told him to put that out more often, keep his blood sugar level steady, and change some things about his life. So he started to look into the disease from the point of view of what could be done to fix it mentally, behaviorally, and in other ways. Most people with diabetes have type 2, which happens when their bodies don't make or store glucose sugar properly. These things can make glucose build up in the blood instead of getting to cells to be used as fuel. Over time, having high blood sugar can hurt your eyes, kidneys, nerves, or heart very badly. Some of the first signs of type 2 diabetes are feeling tired, hungry, and thirsty more often, having to go to the bathroom more often, having blurry vision, and cuts and bruises taking longer than usual to heal. Some treatments for type 2 diabetes include medicines or insulin, but for many, staying busy and eating well are enough to control their blood sugar levels. And dietitian is also important because they teach you about food. The doctor is the real star of the show. Your partner and everyone else close to you need to be on board with what you want to do. This is the first thing that people with type 2 diabetes who want to live a longer, better life should do: make a plan and stick to it. You have to be responsible and organized in order to stick to your plan once you already have one. But really, once you do that, it will be normal from then on. My life is set up so that I don't have to think about this every day, he said. What does Dr. Phil want parents to know? Dr. Phil McGraw thought about how far his important show had come in its 21 seasons while he paid a special visit to The View on February 26, 2024. It wasn't just a show to remember the good times, Dr. Phil also used it to talk about a big issue that families today face: how to be a good parent in this digital world. We can't say enough about how social media changes the thoughts of young people these days. So Dr. Phil's advice is both timely and important. Because he is smart and clear, he talked about his fears about how digital platforms affect kids and teens. This has made him a leader for many. It's important to listen to this talk. That parents who have to deal with their kids' online lives feel stressed and lost. Parents who want to give their kids a safe and healthy online place can learn a lot from what Dr. Phil says on The View. He warns people to be careful on social media and stresses how important it is to know about and be a part of your kids' screen time. This episode of The View isn't just a look back at Dr. Phil's important job. It should wake up adults these days. See it if you want to learn how to deal with the problems that come with being a parent today. Even after his show was canceled and he had health problems, Dr. Phil's wealth kept growing. It was said to be around $460 million not long ago. Dr. Phil made most of his money from the show, but he was also interested in other things, like his love life and The Incident. People know that the famous TV host has problems with women, especially since his shows became so popular. There were stories about his love life, which made some people who thought he was a good man change their minds. Let's start at the beginning. Debbie Higgins was also a TV show host when Dr. Phil McGraw met her and began dating her when he was about 20 years old. Debbie knew her boyfriend was cheating on her while they were dating, but she didn't pay attention to them because she believed Dr. Phil would be more responsible after they got married. After some time, they started making plans for their wedding. It took months of planning, but they finally got married. However, we don't believe this was the beginning of a new journey for Dr. Phil. There were a lot of problems in the marriage. Debbie was said to have been forced by Dr. Phil to be a stay-at-home wife, which made it hard for her to make friends and have relationships. One time Debbie was interviewed, she used the chance to talk about her marriage with the press. She called her husband overbearing. He wouldn't let her work in the family business. People were more interested in why Dr. Phil would smile for the camera but be angry at home with his wife after hearing the news. She was also told to start lifting weights to get a bigger bust, and all she could do was cleaning. She told everyone that her husband was seeing someone else. They talked about how she saw him look at women when they were dating, but she didn't say anything because she thought things would be different when they got married. However, it was not true because he kept cheating. Debbie and her husband were always fighting, so in 1973 she finally decided to get a divorce. There was a split that same year because of their breakup and past relationships, Doctor. Phil looked like a TV host who was known for showing cheating partners to be cheating on his show for over 21 seasons, all while cheating on his wife at home. He met Robin Jo Jameson and began dating her after being split for a year. They got married in the end. These two people had 2 kids together. Their names were Jay McGraw and Jordan McGraw. People saw Robin and her husband on the show and became fans. It wasn't just because she shared his desire to help and inspire others, she also gave women advice. But there was a scandal. When some people saw how close Dr. Phil was to Oprah, they began to talk about his friendship with her. Some even said Dr. Phil had quietly split up with his wife and moved in with Oprah. For Fox News, Dr. Phil said that Oprah is one of his best friends and that he loved being honest with her because they could both be honest. This was during the big fight and the drama on social media. Getting a divorce from his wife wasn't going on in secret. He said he knew a lot of people were waiting for his second marriage to end in divorce. His friendship with Robin, on the other hand, is one of the best things that came to him. He still believes they will enjoy being together. They are still married after more than 30 years of being together. Aside from the relationship trouble, Dr. Phil also had a lot of legal issues that were bad for his health in the show. Dr. Phil and his wife decided not to use social media anymore after this scandal to avoid more trouble or abuse. Not long ago, it was said that Dr. Phil told his son Jay that he was going to divorce Robin. This story has not yet been proven to be true, though. What do you think about this? Have you really thought that Dr. Phil was seeing Oprah? And did his wife Robin have a lot to do with why the Dr. Phil show quit? Enter your answer in the box below. Don't forget to follow us and like our YouTube page. Before you leave, please click on the movie that's on your screen.